Hello, everybody. I'm Mel Doerr, the Aloha Shirt Psychic, and I thought this Hawaiian background might be kind of neat, or a tropical background anyway. I've just recently returned from Hawaii with my nieces. We had a great time. I had a show with Linda Grindle today on my channel. I just did a show this evening, or with Sherry, and I'm recording this tonight, but I'll air it probably tomorrow morning. So what is tonight? Monday, August 25th, but it'll go up Morning Moments with Mel. Anyway, um, there's some things I'd like to talk about. And one of the things I want to speak to you about is what's happening here in Chicago. I find it an abomination, an absolute abomination that DIC, you can sound it out. It stands for Dictator in Chief. Citolini is going to think about sending troops, National Guard troops, to Chicago because, according to him, we're just riddled with crime. Actually, uh, we do have a high crime rate, but it's only in certain neighborhoods, and downtown is very safe. And Chicagoans are hopping mad about this, both Democrat and Republicans alike. You know, Donald, I find it amazing that he's not sending National Guard troops to any of the Republican cities, only Democratic cities, typically with black mayors. Uh, he's sending some National Guard or talking about it to Republican states, but I wonder what cities he's going to target there. Probably Democratic ones. Um, but he doesn't talk about the state. He talks about the city of Chicago. And our governor, J.B. Pritzker, came out and gave a wonderful speech in Chicago today, as well as the mayor of Chicago. And all of us know that Donald Trump is doing this because he's trying to intimidate voters and he's trying to intimidate the citizens of our good city not to exercise our right for peaceful assembly and marching against his presidential decrees and all the other stuff. You know, my guides also tell me that he's trying to do this because he wants to incite violence, and then he can say, "Oh, they're insurrectionists," and call out the National Guard. And then it's a litmus test to see how far he can go, what the courts will let him get by with, and also a litmus test to see if he can institute martial law. He invents facts to go with what he wants. And then he tries to use certain media arms, whose name I won't mention, to report those so-called facts, but really they're lies. It's misinformation and it's propaganda for his regime. I'm glad that we have our governor, and I'm glad that we have the mayor of Chicago because both are speaking out against the DIC. Spell his name out. The other thing I think he's doing is a distraction and detract and deceive from the whole Epstein thing because they're going to release those Epstein files. They will leak out, and it's going to make Trump look horrible. And I predict that Pam Bondi is going to try to say, oh, there's nothing in there against Trump, nothing like that. And they're going to they'll leave out certain parts of it, but the whole file will leak out. And Trump is very nervous about it. So always his distractions. Um, It's time for the Democrats, in my opinion, to start being proactive as opposed to reactive. And Trump sending the National Guard in, saying that it's some sort of emergency, I see going to court, and that's going to backfire in his face big time. Murders in Chicago are down by 32%. Crime here is much lower. And there are a lot of cities in the country that have a lot more crime than Chicago does. So we know what Trump is doing. It's intimidation. And that is how dictators react. And even in his press conference, he just said that, and it really fried me, that I'm not a dictator, but maybe we need a dictator. Excuse me? What president would ever say that? It should be someone who honors our democracy and not someone doing everything in their power to destroy it. I find that unacceptable. My guides tell me he will send the National Guard to other cities. He is going to bring in agitators to try to incite to try to incite violence. And then he can say that, he can do martial law or then have the National Guard turn against people. And unfortunately, I see something akin to Kent State. Um, I don't know when, but I know it's going to happen, and I pray that it's not in Chicago. Um, but I see the things he's doing, his executive decrees, if you will, executive orders, are making many people in this country, the majority of us, hopping mad. And it's time we do get mad. We can still be spiritual, we can still spread peace and love. But we can also get angry and say, enough is enough. We're tired of the violation of human rights. We're tired of the bigotry. We're tired of the racism. We're tired of the wholesale roundup of our Latino brothers and sisters for the fact that they're Latino. They're not criminals. They've done nothing wrong. And you're sending them to concentration camps. And the only reason that he's doing this is just to make it look as if he's doing something for the good of the country. And that is such a lie. Like Abrego Garcia, he was freed. He did what he was supposed to do and went to immigration like he was supposed to, and they detained him again. And now they're talking about deporting him to Uganda. But if he pleads guilty, they'll send him to Costa Rica so he can be free. Garcia will not bow down to Trump's bidding. He will not bow down to Trump's bullying. And he's going to fight all the way. And I see him acquitted. And I see him not going to Uganda. The only reason that Trump took, directed, now this is what my guides tell me, the only reason that Trump directed immigration to take Garcia into custody is to punish Garcia for using his constitutional right to speak up. That's why he's being punished. That's why he's being threatened to be deported again and sent to Uganda. It's clear to me that they have trumped up charges against him. Just like people who speak out against Trump, Trump tells the DOJ and immigration or whomever to come up with charges against these people. And the charges aren't true. They're just not true. So I see people of all colors, of all races, of all religions, of all sexuality, being proactive and standing up against this fear-mongering agitator who wants to create chaos and anarchy and keep everybody fearful of him. That's not how democracies work. We are not a banana republic. And I see our democracy flying right out the window. But when I was in Springfield at Lincoln's tomb, his spirit came through and he told me, our union shall endure, our democracy shall prevail. And I believe that. I believe that wholeheartedly, that our democracy will hold, our union will endure, and justice, he said, shall prevail. Those three, and I believe it. It doesn't look like it's happening now, but my guides tell me over and over and over and over again that justice will prevail. Um, I've said it many times. I see, and this is entertainment purposes only, but my guides tell me this, that Pam Bondi will be under indictment once Cittadini is gone. I do not foresee him finishing his full term as president. Um, he's got to watch his health. I'm not a doctor, but I think he's got congestive heart failure. And if J.D. Vance becomes president, I do not see him president for long, even if he becomes president. So I see a complete change. Trump is not going to be in office a full 4 years. I can tell you that. It's going to be much, much shorter. Thank goodness. Um, but meanwhile, back at the ranch, he is certainly trying to dismantle our democracy. He's dismantling our rights. And for a party that talked about individual rights, boy, he's doing a great job of doing away with our freedom of speech, our freedom of expression, our freedom of movement, the whole Constitution. He wants to create chaos and anarchy and fear because that keeps him, he thinks, in control. Um, John Bolton, who was, I think, pro-Trump, and correct me if I'm wrong, or was a Republican, was raided by the FBI today. Anybody that goes against Trump and doesn't do what Trump wants, he's going to do this too. He's going to rule through intimidation and fear. But many people are going to start to speak up and say, we're not afraid. We are going to become proactive as opposed to reactive. And that's what the Democrats are going to start doing and beating Trump at his own game. My hat goes off to Newsom in California because he's is brilliant. He's doing the memes that Trump would put out, except it's Newsom is doing it for Newsom. And everybody gets why Newsom's doing it. And now, the MAGAs are saying, you can't do that. That's not right. How can he do that? Well, he did it. Um, and I see this media bias toward Trump soon ending. Um, a lot of these news channels that are his propaganda arm, once he's gone, they are going to have a hard, hard time making money, and many of them will be sold and just chopped up into pieces. Social media and word of mouth and things like that are going to be the biggest way of getting truth and facts futuristically while he is still in office. Um, I feel that psychically, my guides tell me he's also creating a lot of these diversions and distractions because of the Epstein files. And as I said earlier, those are going to be pretty damning to him. Now, Pam Bondi, as I was going to say, you know, uh, I see her once Trump is gone, being in deep trouble. I've said it numerous times for obstruction of justice and for abuse of power. And that's what Trump is doing. There's going to be some Supreme Court justices that are going to be accused of the same and impeached and removed from the court because of obstruction of justice and uh, um, and for abuse of power. Kash Patel is another one that I see going to jail. Again, abuse of power. obstruction of justice, Hegseth, all of those people I see are going to be in deep water. Um, they're going to have huge problems. Kristi Noem is another one. And I'm not being disingenuous when I say that I see these people under criminal investigations futuristically once Trump is gone. Uh, I mean, it's going to be huge. And if they're smart, they'll take a plea bargain and then they will go along with what the investigators uh, and work with the investigators. I doubt it. But I see Bondi in jail. I see Cash Patel in jail. Uh, Miller, the same. He's going to be in deep doo-doo. So, and we'll see it happening, but we must become proactive. Um, Trump wants violence, but I see behind the scenes a lot of the generals that he fired, a lot of the military people that he fired, working behind the scenes to help get him out of office. Um, I say that he will turn the military on American citizens, which is illegal. And a lot of people in the military will refuse to follow those illegal orders. And for a while, it'll look like they're in trouble. But ultimately, they'll get out of that trouble because they're going to stand up for what is just and for what is right. The whole thing with flag burning. Now, I don't believe in burning a flag, but I believe in someone's constitutional right to free expression. And now he signed another presidential order that it's going to be illegal to burn a flag and that people that do would get a year in jail, not get out any sooner. And I see that going to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court's holding up their formal decision saying, no, it's a right to expression, and the government can't limit that right to expression. And a lot of these cases, like against Garcia, and a lot of those cases, I feel are also going to go to the Supreme Court at some point, and the court's going to say the government, it's unconstitutional for the government to retaliate against these people and come up with fake charges against them because these people have spoken up against Donald Trump. Those cases are going to go to the Supreme Court. Um, I heard today, that I have to, I chuckle at the hypocrisy and the, what's the word I'm looking for here? The double, the hypocrisy. Um, I can do it, but you can't. The double standards, that's what I was looking for. That there were a congressman today, it's going to come out, was accused of sleeping, a male congressman. He's engaged to a female, and he's accused of sleeping with multiple male escorts. Now, what two people do behind closed doors, I don't have a problem with that, provided they're consenting. But for a congressman who's a MAGA and who's talking about it's wrong to be gay and anti-gay rights and anti-gay marriage and all this stuff, but yet to get caught numerous times sleeping with male escorts. Wow. And this investigation also showed that there were a lot of Republican MAGA officials, state lawmakers, lobbyists, federal staffers, and this congressman who are, anti-gay, anti-gay rights, anti-gay marriage, but they're sleeping with male escorts and they're males to people that. So that's going to be pretty damning. It's all going to come out, I promise. And it's going to be huge. Of course, they're going to deny it as fake news. It's not real, blah, blah, blah. It's going to make me look bad. But some of these escorts are going to come forward and say, no, it happened. Um, it's going to be like another Stormy Daniels thing. And by the way, she was telling the truth. You know, Trump talks about criminals, but yet he's a president who had what? He was found guilty of 34 criminal felony charges. Hmm. Let's see how that plays out, shall we? And by the way, that will come back to bite him as well. I try to see a long life for him. I don't. I don't wish him harm, but he's really got to watch his health. Um, so the whole thing with flag burning, you burn the flag and you go for a year in jail. That'll go to the Supreme Court, as I said, and they'll say no. It's somebody's constitutional right to do that. And I heard today that a veteran burned a flag across the street from the White House in protest of Trump's presidential decree. He thinks he's a king. And what did he, the whole thing about dictators? Oh my gosh. Okay. I also heard today that Trump fired the Federal Reserve Governor, Lisa Cook. Um, and my guides tell me that he fired her because she wouldn't cut rates quickly enough to his liking, which cutting the rates that quickly could result in a disaster for the US economy, in my psychic opinion. But he accused her of making false statements on applications for her home mortgages before she even had this job. And he fired her on those allegations. Now, the question is, are those allegations true? And the answer, in my psychic opinion, my guides tell me, is no. She hasn't done anything wrong. And that this is exactly my point, that if anybody doesn't do what he wants, he gets rid of them because according to the law, he has to fire her for just cause. And there was no just cause, so he invented it. He invented it. Uh, he cooked up those allegations to get rid of her, as I said, because she will not do his bidding. She's also the first black woman to serve on the as the governor of the Federal Reserve. Hmm. See, he wants to get rid of her because he wants to change the makeup of the Federal Reserve uh, so he can have a majority of his people on the Federal Reserve that will do his bidding, and then he can control the Federal Reserve, and he thinks they'll do what he wants. And each of these people are elected to terms of 14 years, or appointed 14 years, I think elected through Congress or something. They're nominated by the president, but then it has to go through Congress. And then he will have them doing his bidding. Uh, so that's why he's getting rid of her. I think also because she's black. Um, my guides tell me that she's going to challenge the firing and challenge Donald Trump in court. And my guides tell me she will win. So for a while, it might look as if he's going to succeed in changing the makeup of the Federal Reserve, but he will not ultimately succeed because she's going to win. Um, Again, the law says he can only fire somebody for a cause. So he made up the false allegations to have cause to fire her. Um, it actually violates the Federal Reserve Act. Uh, and he's searching for a scapegoat. He's searching for a scapegoat to cover his own failure to lower costs for to lower costs for Americans. And he's thinking if he can get them to lower interest rates, that'll help the economy. Actually, you do it too quickly, it's going to be disastrous for the economy. Um, so as I said, he's trying to blame his own failure to lower costs for Americans. And that's according to Elizabeth Warren. She said that's why he's doing this. And among other reasons, because it's a bigoted thing to do. The other reason is he wants to control the Federal Reserve. He wants to control every aspect of government. And he says he's not a dictator. Okay. Now, I also found out today Trump threatens to sue California, is going to sue California over their redistricting plan, favoring the Dems. But yet, he praised Texas because they withdrew, because they redrew, I'm sorry, he praised Texas because they redrew their political lines that would give them five more seats in the midterms. But yet, anybody else that does it that's Democrat, he's going to file a lawsuit, and Newsom told him, bring it on. Because you know what? If the court says that California can't do it, they're also going to have to, somebody's going to file suit against Texas, and that same court is going to have to say that Texas can't do it. Now, the Supreme Court's already said that the states can gerrymander. So let's see how they'll rule on this one. I can tell you right now, it's not going to rule in Trump's favor on the California issue. And I see many, many other Democratic states following suit. Newsom was smart, though. He put it on the ballot like a referendum, and Californians voted for it. Texas Governor Abbott just said, we're going to do it. And, it passed in Texas. The Senate passed it, and I think their court passed it. Well, of course, they've got an Attorney General Paxton down there who's about as crooked as a barrel of rattlesnakes. But, Paxton's going to be in big trouble in the future. I also see him under indictment. It's a while off yet, but you'll see it happening. Let's see. I took my notes here today. Um, did you hear where Trump called Pritzker fat? Well, our governor may be overweight, but at least he has a brain, and he's not like Trump, who's overweight with no brain. I wonder how somebody told me how tall Trump was, and my response was, I didn't know that pile doo-doo that high. You know, sorry. Um, um, I heard that five journalists were killed in Israel because Israel made strikes on a Gaza hospital, and I guess the journalists were there. I got a funny feeling that they knew that that Netanyahu knew that some of those journalists were in there, and they knew that he knew that they were against him. So they said it was a mistake, but I'm telling you, he ordered those strikes knowing that a few of those journalists were there. That's what my guides tell me anyway. Um, so I have some questions that you all asked. Now, I'm not going to answer personal questions. I will probably, um, maybe day after tomorrow, go over some of the personal questions that you've asked. It was really for political only, but I will answer the political ones, and then at a later time, I'll go ahead and answer the personal ones. Um, Okay, so Jane says, what do you see happening with the U.S. housing market and also the interest rates? Well, he thinks he's going to fire this woman, and he's going to force or try to force the Federal Reserve to lower the rates really quickly. And he can say, see what I did? I got the interest rates lowered. But that could be disastrous for the economy. Do I like these high interest rates? No, I do not. But it was his policies that caused a lot of it to happen in the first place. Um, Here in Illinois or in Chicago, I shouldn't say the whole state, there's no inventory. Houses come on the market, condos come on the market, townhouses come on the market, and people bid on them. And, let's say it's listed for 250,000 and people are bidding above the appraised price and the listed price because there's such a shortage of housing. And right now in the Chicago area, it's clearly a seller's market. But what Trump wants to do is going to dump a lot of inventory on the market. It makes it a buyer's market, and it brings down those prices of housing that were falsely inflated. And what I intuit is a lot more foreclosures, a lot of people walking away from their properties because it's going to be underwater. I see the interest rates lower, and they'll do it quickly, but it's a mistake. They need to do it slowly to stimulate things. But I'm telling you, the woman that he fired, I look at Cook, I think is her name, Lisa Cook. She's gonna win in court. Good for you, Lisa. Fight. Um, so it's time for us, rather than to be reactive, to be proactive. Our right to peaceful assembly, our right to criticize the government without fear of reprisal from the government. Those are the things that people are going to start doing more and more, and just refusing to obey laws that are unconstitutional. Now, some might call that civil disobedience. I call that our constitutional right. So we'll see a lot more of that coming. Okay. Um, MS Sherry says it's a good question. Will Trump replace our American flag with his own flag? He'll try, but it won't work. It would take an act of Congress to do that. He's gonna, but my psychic light bulb just went on for that question, and I'm feeling like he's gonna want to put his picture on currency. And if he does, just don't use that denomination. And once he's gone, it'll be taken off in a nanosecond. Um, Nora Aries says, do other world leaders know about Cittadini's poor health? Will the press release and provide more information on his administration covering it up? I do think there are people in other countries that know, leaders that know about his ill health, and I see it being leaked out, his true diagnosis, and he's going to say it's fake, it's not true, blah, 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 but it will be true. And that's coming very, very, very soon. Okay. All right. I've already answered about Sue Saltner says, what's 45's problem with Kilmer Abrego Garcia? And will he be deported again? Problem is because Garcia, um, Garcia um, spoke up, and he used his constitutional right to speak up, and Trump didn't like it. So Trump is retaliating. Um, okay. Laurie Constable says, hi, Mel, I love your shows. Thank you so much. Here's my question. Many psychics are saying something big is going to happen with regard to Cittadini in September. What do you see? Do you get a sense of what might be coming around him? I don't read on what other psychics says, but many, many of us in the community have been feeling something really big happening. I don't know if it's September, I don't know if it's October, but the stronger I feel something, the sooner that it is it's going to happen. And I'm feeling this very strong. I'm almost thinking it might be with his health, because spirit shows me dark clouds all around him. And whenever I'm shown that, that means health issues. So there's something, in my psychic opinion, big coming with his health, but a lot of big allegations coming out against him that are going to be true. And he'll try to divert and step around, but it won't work. Uh, he'll try to control the media, and he does for a while, but guess what? Uh, there'll be certain outlets, media outlets, and social media that just will not let it go. I think it has to do with the Maxwell case. I really, with Maxwell case and the Epstein files and other stuff, the whole National Guard thing as well. Um, okay. Somebody says, "Hi, Auntie Mel. Just tell me, does the Lord hear our prayers?" Yes, I think so. But it's not like an Aladdin's lamp and you rub it and you get good things out of it. There's a lot of rough edges, and right now our country's going through a very dark period. But my guides assure me that the light will win out. The darkness will not win. The light will win out. You have to have both. But right now, the darkness is pushing back the light. And it's like Ruth Bader Ginsburg showed me, there was this tiny speck of light in this dark hand. Like, ugh. like chocolatey. I like chocolate, but this is just dark and runny, trying to put out the light. And it was flickering. It almost went out, but it was an ember. And then it got very bright again. And then all of a sudden, that same hand, that dark hand of Trump and his regime tried to put it out, and it's got down to a little flicker again. But then it came back more brilliant than the sun, and it conquered that darkness. And that's the analogy for our country. Our light will conquer Trump's darkness. My guides tell me that. So, but we have to be proactive about it. We have to start taking action. Inaction is not the answer. Um, let's see. Okay. Okay, I've answered this one. Give me 1 second. Okay, Auntie Vaughn says, Aloha, Auntie Mel. Effective August 29th, postal services from around the globe will no longer be sending packages to the U.S. because of the tariffs. Anything valued 800 or less. Will there be a last minute reprieve, or are we totally in deep doo-doo? Well, we're kind of in doo-doo anyway, but we'll get our way out of it. But Trump's going to be in deep doo-doo and all of his cronies. That you can take to the bank. Yeah, it will affect us, but I see last minute reprieves because people aren't going to be able to get packages from overseas, and a lot of people are going to be hopping mad. So, however, we'd have to rely on more private services like maybe UPS or FedEx or things like that. But, his way of trying to control the postal service or to privatize it, and that'll never work, by the way. All right. Um, Heather says something, and I just think this is so cool. We were talking about giving, and when you give not because you expect something in return. You do it because it feels right. It's the right thing to do. You do it because it's not transactional. It's just, I'm doing it because it makes me feel good to do it. It doesn't have to be money. It can be helping somebody, giving them a smile, a nice gesture, anything like that. And she says, Mel, I heard your comments earlier today in your show with Linda G when you were discussing the fact that you give when you're led to give. And I just want to share that with the universe, my gratitude for a lovely shuttle bus driver who quickly stepped in to help me the other day to give me $1 for my bus fare because I mistakenly came up with $1 short to take the bus that afternoon. And I just sincerely think like that. And I just sincerely, let me see, I'm sorry. And I just sincerely thank people like that and people like you, Mel, indeed are making our crazy world a better place right now. Well, nothing, nothing can undo an act of kindness or an act of love. And it will always, always, always win out over the darkness and the evil. Always will. And that's why I do kind acts because it uplifts my energy and hopefully everybody else's or other people's too. And maybe they'll do a kind act and maybe it'll get contagious. That's how I see it anyway. Um, so sincerely, Mel, thanks for your gracious attitude of giving just to give. Yeah, you give just to give. Because trust me, it's amazing to be given such necessary help sometimes in unexpected situations. I remember once I was in Germany, and in Europe, you have to pay to go to the bathroom. We were in Heidelberg, and at that point, there was a military base in Heidelberg. And the lady sitting there guarding the bathroom, I said, I had to go to the bathroom so bad, and I didn't have any euros. And I said, will you take American money, please? I gotta go. And she goes, nine? Nope, please. Nine means no in German. I'm like, oh my God, I gotta go so bad, please. Nope. And I heard a lady behind me, and she goes, here, I'll pay. And I go, thank you, thank you. Here, let me give you euros. She goes, not necessary. And she said, my husband's in the military in the base here in Heidelberg. And when I first moved here, the same thing happened to me. And I always made a promise that if I ever had enough to pay for somebody to go to the bathroom, I would do it. It was only like €1 or something. And I never forgot that, the kindness of a person who helped out. And it's things like that keep you going. So just remember that, you all. It's okay to speak up. It's okay to be proactive. But just do a kind deed for somebody. It doesn't cost you anything. It can be, like I said, a smile or a thank you or calling somebody that might need to talk or calling somebody who is a shut-in and saying, "Hi, how are you?" Something like that. Volunteering somewhere. If you can't volunteer, there's all kinds of nice things you can do. Just send positive energy to people. It's contagious. All right. I trust everyone will have a nice day. I thank you so, 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 so much for watching my show. And Aiden just told me I have, I think, over 80,000 subscribers. I never thought I'd get to 20,000. And I owe that to all of you. I love you all. I thank you. Please speak up. Uh, always stand up for the underdog. Um, because at some point an underdog might have to step up for you. Try to do a good deed daily. It's called a mitzvah in Jewish. I'm not Jewish, but I like to do a good deed every day, or as many as I can. All right, this has been wonderful. I wish you all well, and thank you, thank you, thank you for your loving support. And later on tonight, I'll be on with Arthur. Wednesday, I think I have a night off. Thursday with Kevin Chandler. And then, if you're interested in our event in Benicia in November, go to Linda Grindle, Linda Grindle, GRINDEL.com /events. Scroll down to Benicia and sign up. I think there's 3 or 4 openings left. My Iceland trip is sold out. I might have one available for Peru, but next year, the Danube in May, and then the Galapagos in September. I wish you all well, and try out Andro products. They're incredible. Andro dash Niki Niki.com. Um, thank you for being so wonderful, and I send you all much aloha.